for whatever this thing is because it promised it would get the bad man out of office. It's all I think about, so this makes sense.
Who cares if it only became a citizen recently?
Maybe we made a mistake.
The most popular mayors in America, and a mayor I think is going to get even more popular as New York descends into absolute chaos and Gotham, is the great mayor of Miami, Francis Suarez, who joins us live now. Welcome back, Mr. Mayor. And what's your take on this news out of New York?
Thanks so much, Benny. It's always wonderful to be with you. You're sort of a Miamian by adoption, if not by birth. But look, my take is this is disastrous for New York, like you said. I mean, I think, it reminds me of what my parents fled when they left Cuba. There you had a young, charismatic, well-spoken leader who said, give us all your property, give us all your businesses, and don't worry, we'll make everybody good, we'll make everybody equal. And he did. He delivered. He made everybody equally poor, everybody equally miserable, everybody equally destitute, and enslaved his population for a generation. And so, unfortunately, we're seeing this across America in a lot of blue cities where they believe that government is the arbiter of people's success. In Miami, we think the opposite. We lowered taxes to the lowest level in history. We grew 150% in 10 years. We have the lowest crime rate. We're pro-police, pro-law enforcement, defund police, no cash bail. And guess what? We started recording homicides in 1946. We had 32. Last year, with a lot more people than 1946, we had 27. Okay, our worst year, we had 220, which was 1980. So we've created one of the safest cities in America. And then we decided we want to lean into innovation. We want to create an innovation economy because we know, just like this shows perfect proof, that the world is changing. It's no longer legacy media. You know what I mean? It's no longer, the industrial economy. It is a knowledge-based and digital economy. And we want to be at the forefront of that. And so we have the lowest unemployment in America, highest median wage growth in America, number one in tech job growth, number one in tech job migration. We've moved companies that manage $12 trillion in assets. So how do we do this? We did it simply by believing in our country. We believe in what our country's about. We believe in American capitalism. We believe in liberty and freedom. And that was it. That was our formula for success. Unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of cities tax their residents to death, not make it safe, being haven for homeless. And it's destroying American cities. If Zoran Mamdani wins, and let me tell you, usually the Democratic nominee wins in New York. If he wins in New York, the inevitable consequence is going to be an exodus, a mass exodus of wealth to Miami.
I want to talk about that because it's so wild, this map. Wall Street voted for the communist in New York. What does that say about the current environment in Wall Street? And man, every time we're in Miami, it's just pretty obvious. The not so kept secret is that Wall Street has already moved to Florida, and the bankers and the businesses and the industry and the energy, the dynamicism have already moved, have already vacated here. But here they are, Mr. Mayor, voting for the communist on Wall Street. What the hell's going on there?
Well, I'll tell you two things. Number one is those who have moved are predominantly Republican because Miami-Dade County flipped to Republican, right? And the state of Florida has flipped to Republican. And so that's benefited the president, that's benefited a lot of down ballot candidates, congressional candidates, et cetera. So the people that have moved by and large, at least initially, the initial wave, the post-COVID wave, I think were largely Republicans, and people feared that they could be Democrats and change our politics. And that so far hasn't played out, which is a good thing for Miami, by the way. The second part is, I think there's two things at play here. One is, if you're down in your luck, it's really easy when someone tells you, I have the answer. I'm just going to take more from those who are successful and wealthy and just give it to you, right? Unfortunately, that's never worked. It's never worked in the history of humanity. In my opinion, it's probably the largest fraud or one of the largest frauds perpetuated on humanity. And we've seen, not just in American cities, but we've seen in countries in our hemisphere destroyed, which by the way exacerbates the immigration issue because people are fleeing poverty to come to the United States, right? And so they're destroying governments across the country and across the world. And what that does is it makes people come to Miami. And so, that's the inevitable consequence of some of this stuff. And like you said, a lot of people have come. That's why we've attracted $12 trillion in asset managed companies to come to Miami. And we've grown our venture capital pipeline by 500%.
12 trillion with a T?
With a T. with a T, $12 trillion. Companies that have moved to Miami are managing $12 trillion now through offices in Miami.
It's incredibly impressive. You know, we see the flight. You can see the loss of electoral votes. You can see the loss of population that's happening in New York City. And this happens, of course, every single time there is a Marxist or a socialist government that starves out and kills the capital and kills the environment for any type of growth or human flourishing. That's very interesting. Your story, your family fled communist in Castro, Cuba. Yes?
That's absolutely right.
Yes.
My dad was 12, my mom was 7, and it's a quintessential American dream story. My dad came to this country with nothing, was blessed to get a scholarship to a very nice or very good Catholic school in Washington, D.C. He got a presidential scholarship to college. He graduated Summa. He got 2 graduate degrees from Harvard, and he's written 12 books. And he was the first Cuban mayor of Miami in the history of Miami. And I think, to me, it says that in this country, if you work hard, if you study, if you take care of your family, you can achieve just about anything. And that's what the American dream is about. It's alive and real for those who want to work hard for it. But the difference is, in socialist countries, they claim that they can just give it to you. You can just have it, without doing anything, in return. And what happens in these countries is, once it becomes socialist, or these cities, the producers, the people that are really hiring people, risking capital, producing, leave right away. So you have this vacuum of capital. You have this vacuum of leadership, a vacuum of people who are productive, and the country crumbles, the cities crumble.
And you're saying, and this is a pretty remarkable thing, you just said that this reminds you very much, these policies remind you of Fidel Castro. You unpack that?
Yeah, it's the same ideology, right? Is this government as a purveyor of success ideology? It's the bigger government solves more problems ideology. And what we've seen is, the more government that you have, the more problems you have. There was an interesting biggie song, more money, more problems, right? Well, the more government you have, the more problems that you have oftentimes. And in Miami, what we try to do is get out of the way. We've lowered taxes to the lowest level ever. And what's interesting is, we have the best reserves ever and the best credit rating ever as a government. So our growth has fueled our revenue, not taxes. And I think people misunderstand. They think you increase taxes, you increase revenue. You do the exact opposite. You increase taxes, you scare people, you lose revenue. And then it becomes a vicious cycle, because you got to keep increasing taxes to keep up for the loss of revenue.
So what do you predict for New York? Will it go the way of Havana? Will it go the way of the Cuban capital city? We were in Havana a couple of years ago. I mean, it was a third world. I mean, it was every bit of a third world country. It was one of the saddest places I've ever visited in my life. Total decay. You can see a once great city that is just sunken into a war zone would be the right way to say it, without a shot being fired.
Yeah, it's a time capsule of what it was, right? It's like you froze time and nothing progressed, for a generation. But I mean, listen, I want New York to succeed. I don't think any American wants to see a major city in America fail. I hope that the New Yorkers do the right thing. I hope that they reject this guy's policies, Zoran Mamdani's policies, and understand and not get fooled, right? Because again, it's really easy to get fooled. It's very, very easy to take the bait. And I always said socialism is the easiest sell in politics. So I don't give this guy that much credit, right? Because all he's doing is basically, sort of selling the opiate to the masses, right? Hey, we can give you more. We can just take more from everybody. And they don't see the long-term consequences of it. And we are not going to be fooled in Miami, because we're a byproduct. It's not just Cuba, by the way. It's Nicaragua, it's Bolivia, it's Venezuela, right? We've seen this story over and over and over again. And so, Miamians are probably part of the reason why we're thriving so much, is because we were traumatized by that, our birth story, if you will, right? Like our story of getting here to this country.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say the worst does happen and he does get elected. I think you're going to see a lot of people coming from New York down to Miami. You're already seeing that, obviously, but I think it will really happen in waves. What's your advice to those people?
Well, my advice to them is to reject the kind of politics that they fled, number one. Number two, I would tell them to be conscientious of the fact that, it's going to have an impact on our local ecosystem, our local economy, because the higher demand, listen, we have so much demand, right? That our prices go up, our infrastructure gets taxed, right? Our public infrastructure as well, our traffic, et cetera. So I would just say to understand that they're coming here And by the way, Miami's a city where 70% of Miamians weren't born in Miami, so it's a very normal thing in that sense, right? Like I'm the exception. I was actually the first mayor of Miami born in Miami. So in the history of Miami, since 120 plus years. So, most people do come from the outside, and I think we do a great job of absorbing them. But I do think it does create stress on us as well. So look, we certainly want the jobs that they bring. We want the capital that they bring. You know what I mean? We want to make sure that they become part of the community, invest philanthropically. Like we have a guy like Ken Griffin who came from Chicago, who has been the largest philanthropic donor and donated probably $100 million to philanthropy since he got here. And he's created a lot of high paying jobs. So that's what we want. We want people to integrate themselves in the community, be part of our community, and understand that they, are welcome, but they also are creating stress in our community.
Yeah. Okay, so there's stress in the community. This clip that we have of Zorhan, he's declaring with his victory speech in the Democrat primary last night that he will not be cooperating with ICE. He calls Trump a fascist, and he says that he's going to start breaking federal law immediately. Is this a smart play for the potential new mayor?
No, of course not. I mean, it's all rhetoric. It's all the same rhetoric. It's the same sort of Marxist playbook rhetoric of, promising and promising and promising and promising. Unfortunately, they never are able to deliver. And when they deliver, it delivers misery, right? It delivers all kinds of things that are negative outcomes. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised by the rhetoric. You know what I mean? By the way, he said so many things. It's like we could pick through, a buffet of ridiculous things that have been said. Right. But ultimately, people should listen because, there's a saying that people will do what they say they do oftentimes. Please listen. If you're a New Yorker, listen to what he's saying, because he will try to do what he's saying, and it is going to hurt you big time.
You have very few mayors that can speak at scale about what's going on here. It's quite alarming, though, Mr. Mayor, when you look at what's happened in LA 2 weeks ago, when you have a mayor who is also a Marxist and who went to Cuba. And Karen Bass, people don't know this about her story. She was a little brigadier inside of a communist unit that went to Cuba, and she's a avowed Marxist. She's running LA. That's that and New York are the two biggest cities in America, now potentially run both by Marxists. What the hell's going on here is kind of a wake-up call for the country.
It should be a wake-up call for America. Marxism is antithetical to American values. And, when you juxtapose what happened in LA versus what happened in Miami, we had protests just like in LA, except we had 1,500 people, which is not a lot, and not one arrest. They were incredibly peaceful, and our police department did a magnificent job. So, what we're seeing across America that the media is not talking about, and I know that you are, but nobody's talking about this, is a lot of these Democrats who are failing across America are one-term mayors. Right, you have a one-term mayor in Chicago with Lori Lightfoot. You had a one-term mayor in San Francisco with London Breed. You had a one-term mayor in St. Louis. You had a one-term mayor. You may have a couple more one-term mayors that you've already mentioned, right? So, you're talking about the country is at some level rejecting this stuff, but sometimes they substitute the one-term mayor with a person who's even more socialist, even more liberal. So it really, really makes you wonder what people are listening to, why they're listening to it. And I could just tell you from personal experience, to all New Yorkers, listen, we love your capital. We love your jobs. You're going to, you're probably great for our real estate market in some way and bad for our real estate market in other ways. Right. But for rentals, for sure. But I'm going to tell you that, do not be fooled. This is the easiest sell in politics. It's the opioid that people are trying to sell you. And it is going to have long-term, very, very dramatic repercussions that, by the way, are hard to undo, because once you create these dependencies, it's very hard to unwind them. You see these dictatorships in our hemisphere are generational dictatorships, right? And once these socialists and Marxists get control, they don't want to let go, and they'll do anything they can to not let go.
You talked about, and you led with how safe Miami has gotten, and citing some data from 60 years ago and saying Miami's more safe now with, I don't know, 5-10 million more people living in it, which is very impressive. Zorhan wants to defund the police because they're not queer enough. I'm just quoting his social media. I'm not putting words in his mouth. Here's his social media post. He wants to defund the police because they're not queer enough, and then replace them with counselors and social workers. Would that work out, Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely not. I mean, the defund police, I thought police movement was debunked. You even had Biden at one point. I spoke at the U.S. Conference of Mayors as a president and talked about the dangers of defund police. And he came the next day and he actually agreed with me, which I was shocked, to be honest with you. But the defund police movement is should be a dead movement, a movement that no one should buy into. And we have succeeded because we've supported our law enforcement. We gave them the best technology possible. We paid them well. But in addition to that, we have a great economy. So guess what happens? We were ranked the happiest city in America and the healthiest city in America. So it turns out if you're happy, you're healthy, and you're working, because it's the lowest unemployment in America, guess what you're not doing? You're not killing people, right? So it's not a complicated formula. Happy, healthy, working, you're not killing people. So, we have a well-trained, no nonsense police department. As leaders, we say we have a zero tolerance policy. If you hurt someone or destroy property, you're going to jail. We don't care. We're not here to play games, right? Which has, by the way, helped us in our protests because we've been very, very clear. Listen, you get to exercise your constitutional right. We want to be a place of freedom and liberty where you can say whatever you want to say, even if we don't want to hear you say it or if we don't like what you say. But if you hurt somebody or if you damage property, you are going to jail. And it's a clear message and everybody respects it. And that's why we haven't had a lot of issues.
You've also hasn't had a lot of issues because the state does very much enforce immigration law and enforce and work and cooperate with ICE. I know there was a little bit of friction with some of the sheriffs around, I think it was Broward County, but here in the state of Florida, can you maybe comment on that? Because clearly this has been a massive problem in blue states. This is why you saw LA burn to the ground a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure you're going to see plenty more out of New York and Chicago. Are we going to see the same anti-ICE riots or rioting or lack of work with the feds in Miami?
We haven't. And I can tell you the one protest that was at national protest, I think about 1,500 people showed up. It was very peaceful. We didn't have to make even one arrest. So there was no looting. There was no, nothing on fire like it was in LA. And look, I think the president has been very clear on his stance on immigration. Right. And he shut down the border, which, by the way, is the first thing you have to do to prevent more illegal immigrants from coming in. And the border crossings went down to basically zero. So I think the president has just acted in conformity with his campaign promises. And all the polls that I've seen show that Americans believe that Republicans are way more responsible, or acting more responsibly on illegal immigration than Democrats. And I think it was a losing issue for Democrats. They tried to pivot out of it. If you remember at the end of Biden's terms, he tried to pivot out of it when he realized what a disaster it was for him. Unsuccessfully, of course, because he couldn't articulate his way out of it. And so, I just think that the president is doing what he said he was going to do.
You're the son of first generation immigrants to this country. And there's a large conversation happening right now, sort of led by Stephen Miller from the White House, but about the lack of vetting that occurs and how toxic that becomes to our national psyche and the fabric that knits our country together when you bring in so many disparate and foreign ideologies that do not conform with the American way of life. Now, you're a prime example, Mr. Mayor, of somebody who came here and whose family seized the American dream. And now your father, mayor of Miami, you're mayor of Miami. This is, of course, a huge American success story. Not a single person would argue with it. How do we get to that model? Because what it looks like right now is there's a lot of people being brought into this country by the tens of millions who hate our country and who wish to burn it to the ground or wish to elect somebody utterly in a foreign ideology to lead our biggest city.
Well, I think number one, the people who come to this country have to pledge allegiance to this country, right? And to what the principles of this country are and have always been. And I think as a Cuban American, right, and as a son of Cuban immigrants, we are incredibly grateful. Thank you for that picture. We're incredibly grateful. Those are my parents. We're incredibly grateful to be Americans, right? And we get up every day, and part of my public service and my father's public service is a thank you to this country for the opportunities that they've given us that we would have never been able to get pretty much anywhere in the world, and certainly not in our home country under communism. So I think it's important that the people who come into this country are those people. I think the second part is, there's this misperception that when you're coming to this country illegally, there's this perception among Democrats that you're not breaking the law. You are breaking the law. So your first foray into the country is breaking a law. So that makes you wonder if that's the kind of person that you want in the country to begin with, right? Is it going to be someone who follows the rules or someone who doesn't follow the rules? And I think one of the things that exemplifies this country is we're a country of laws and rules, and we want people that follow the rules because that's what keeps our society ordered. And when you see people, for example, just to go back to no cash bail as an example, when you see people go into department stores, destroy steal everything in the department store, leave the department store, and they pay no consequences, that's a lack of order. That's a lack of rules, of implementing and enforcing rules. And what is the consequence? The CVS or the Walgreens or whatever, they close. They say, look, we can't sustain these losses, right? And so we're going to close, which means that not only does the business suffer, but everyone in that neighborhood who relied on CVS for all the things that we rely on a day-to-day basis is suffering as well. Right. So that's the part that people don't get. It's great to be sympathetic. And yes, people are fall on hard times, but that doesn't give them the right, no matter how hard things were for our parents when they came here with nothing, they never resorted to breaking the law. Right. They resorted to redoubling their efforts, working hard. In some cases, doctors and lawyers had to be dishwashers. Right. And we saw that. And they worked hard little by little, saving up money, sacrificing for their family so that their family, the next generation, could be doctors and lawyers in this country.
Just one final question, Mr. Mayor. Given your background, I think you probably have some great authority to speak on this. We pulled up the American naturalization documents, and you have to effectively prove that you're not a member of the Communist Party. To this day, you have to prove that you're not an active member of the Communist Party and never have been a member of the Communist Party in order to become a naturalized American citizen. You have to effectively disavow it. Yet we have communists running for mayor of some of our largest cities and becoming mayors of our largest cities and winning, which seems like a wild dichotomy to me. Here's the naturalization form right here. It says you can't be a member of the Communist Party, and it says you're not allowed to have active Communist Party affiliation if you're going to become a naturalized American citizen. How do we square this? Should communists be allowed to run for office?
Well, they shouldn't be allowed to be citizens, right? They should be naturalized. And so they certainly shouldn't be able to run for office because that should be a precondition of being able to run for office. So you should be a naturalized, citizen of the country. And so to me, that's, by the way, my favorite part of the naturalization process, right? Is this concept that you cannot be an avowed communist to be an American, right? So, I think that's a beautiful thing. But I think, communism, what people don't understand is communism is a virus. It's insidious. The way that communism, the Cubans in particular, were trained by the Russians, by the KGB, right? And they were trained as spies, and they were trained to manipulate, right? And to be insidious in the way that they penetrate our country and try to infuse this perverted ideology on our cities and on our citizens. And so for me, when I see this happening on a big scale in a big city, I get alarmed, which is why I reached out to you. Right. And I wrote this letter, this op-ed that hopefully will get published in a big publication. I want to warn people. I feel a moral obligation to warn New York about what's coming. If they don't they still have time, right? The election is not till November. They have time. And I hope they make the right decision because otherwise, look, I understand Miami's going to benefit at some level and we'll have some issues as a result of it at some level. But I never want to benefit based on somebody else's misery. Right. And I think that's what I see happening.
Yeah. This is going to be the toughest question of the whole interview. Do you think the Yankees will finally move down to Miami?
It's funny.
It's going to be the Miami Yankees. You know it.
I'm going to tell you a funny story.
Palm Beach Yankees.
I'll tell you a funny story that you'll appreciate. So when they were going to do a transaction tax in New York on stock transfers, right? I reached out to the New York Stock Exchange and I said, hey, why don't you move down to Miami, right? And they said, well, we're no longer like a physical place. We're like a bunch of servers. New York is only just a brand. And I said, well, maybe you should think about changing your brand. So definitely, my friend.
So the stock exchange could move down. All right. That's great. The Miami Jets, the Miami Mets, it's going to happen.
We're going to have to build more stadiums.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Godspeed. Everybody follow the mayor, please, right here. He's got 150,000 followers. He's one of the brightest stars here in the state of Florida. And we very, very much look forward to what happens next for your great city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, my brother. Appreciate that. Bye-bye.